The mining station's alarms screamed through the corridors like dying animals. Captain Jake Morrison pressed himself against the cold metal wall, his breathing heavy as red emergency lights painted everything in blood. 3 months ago, he had been commanding the UES Defiance, humanity's most advanced destroyer. Now he was trapped on a remote asteroid mining facility, running from creatures that shouldn't exist. It all started with her. Dr. Elena Vasquez had been the most brilliant xenobiologist humanity had ever produced. When they first met aboard the Defiance, Jake thought she was just another scientist being transported to the outer colonies. He couldn't have been more wrong. Elena wasn't just studying alien life forms, she was trying to communicate with them. The memory hit him like a physical blow. Elena standing in the ship's lab, her dark eyes bright with excitement as she showed him her latest discovery. A strange, pulsing organism they had found on Kepler 442b. It looked like a cross between coral and brain tissue, with silvery veins that seemed to flow with their own light. "Jake, you have to see this," she had said, her voice trembling with wonder. "It's not just alive. It's intelligent. It's trying to talk to us." He should have listened to his instincts. Should have ordered the thing destroyed the moment they brought it aboard. But Elena's passion was infectious, and Jake found himself drawn not just to her research, but to her. Love made him weak. Love made him stupid. The creature, Elena called it the chorus because of the harmonic sounds it made, seemed harmless enough at first. It sat in its containment unit, pulsing with gentle light, making musical tones that reminded Jake of whale songs. Elena spent hours studying it, trying to decode what she believed was a complex language. "It's beautiful, Jake," she would say, her hand pressed against the containment glass. "Can you hear how it changes its song when I speak? It's learning our language." Jake wanted to share her excitement, but something about the chorus made his skin crawl. Maybe it was his military training, or maybe it was some deep human instinct screaming warnings he chose to ignore. The creature's surface would ripple when people walked by, and its light would pulse faster, almost eagerly. The first sign of real trouble came during their approach to the mining station on asteroid XM47. The Defiance was delivering supplies and personnel, a routine mission that should have been completely safe. But, as they drew closer to the asteroid, the chorus became agitated. Its gentle pulsing turned violent, and the musical tones became sharp, almost painful to hear. "Elena, we need to sedate that thing," Jake had said, watching the creature thrash in its containment unit. "It's acting like it's in pain." "No." Elena's response was immediate and fierce. "Can't you see? It's excited. It knows something we don't. It's trying to warn us about something." Jake should have trusted his gut. Should have ordered the chorus ejected into space. But Elena looked at him with those pleading eyes, and he found himself nodding reluctantly. They would keep monitoring the situation. The mining station was a massive facility carved directly into the asteroid. Thousands of workers lived and labored in its tunnels, extracting rare minerals that powered humanity's expanding civilization. From the outside, it looked peaceful enough, just another human outpost among the stars. But the moment they docked, everything went wrong. The chorus's agitation reached a fever pitch. It began emitting sounds that were no longer musical but aggressive, almost like screaming. The lights in Elena's lab flickered, and several sensitive instruments began malfunctioning. Then, the creature did something that made Jake's blood run cold. It started to glow brighter, and the silvery veins on its surface began to pulse in a pattern. Not random, but deliberate. Organized. Like a signal. "Elena, that's enough," Jake said, his voice sharp with command authority. "We're sedating it now." But, before anyone could act, the mining station's emergency broadcasts began flooding their communications. Reports of equipment failures, then, strange sightings in the deeper tunnels. Workers were reporting shadows that moved on their own, sounds that seemed to come from the walls themselves. Elena was transfixed by the chorus, her face pale but determined. "It's not causing this, Jake. It's responding to something. Something that's already here." The truth hit Jake like a meteor.
The chorus wasn't just an alien organism they had found. It was a scout. A spy. And now it was calling to its family. The first attack came 12 hours after they docked.
Jake was in the station's command center, trying to coordinate evacuation procedures, when the screaming started.
Not human screaming, something else.
Something that made his bones ache and his vision blur.
The mining station's security cameras showed glimpses of things that shouldn't exist.
Creatures that seemed to be made of living shadow, flowing through the corridors like liquid death. They moved through solid walls as if they were made of mist, but, when they touched humans, the results were horrifyingly real. Jake watched helplessly as workers were consumed by the shadow creatures, their bodies dissolving into the same dark substance.
But they didn't die, not exactly.
Their consciousness seemed to merge with the shadows, and Jake could hear their voices in the creatures' movements, pleading for help that would never come. He raced back to the Defiance, his heart pounding with terror and guilt.
The chorus was glowing so brightly now that looking at it directly hurt.
Elena stood before its containment unit, her hand pressed against the glass, tears streaming down her face. "I can hear them," she whispered.
"Jake, I can hear what they're saying. They're not evil.
They're just hungry. They've been sleeping in this asteroid for millions of years, and we woke them up.
They don't understand what we are. They think we're food."
"Then, we destroy the chorus and get out of here," Jake said, reaching for his sidearm.
"Maybe that will stop them." "No." Elena threw herself between Jake and the containment unit. "You don't understand. The chorus isn't controlling them. It's trying to communicate with them.
It's trying to make them understand that we're not just food, we're intelligent beings." Jake looked into Elena's eyes and saw something that terrified him more than the shadow creatures.
She was changing.
Her eyes were beginning to glow with the same silvery light as the chorus, and, when she spoke, there was something else in her voice.
Something that wasn't quite human anymore.
The shadow creatures had found a way into the Defiance. Jake could hear them moving through the ship's hull, their presence causing lights to flicker and temperatures to drop. The crew was panicking, and Jake knew he had only minutes before they would be overwhelmed. "Elena, we have to go," he pleaded, reaching for her hand.
The moment their skin touched, pain shot through his arm like electricity.
Elena's hand was cold as ice, and he could see dark veins spreading up her arm, just like the ones on the chorus. "I'm sorry, Jake," she said, her voice now layered with harmonics that reminded him of the creature's songs.
"But someone has to bridge the gap. Someone has to help them understand."
That's when Jake realized the horrible truth. The chorus hadn't been trying to warn them about the shadow creatures.
It had been preparing Elena to become like them. To become a translator between species. A living communication device.
Elena placed her other hand on the containment unit, and the glass began to dissolve. The chorus flowed out like liquid starlight, covering her body in a cocoon of pulsing energy. Jake watched in horror as the woman he loved disappeared, replaced by something beautiful and terrible and utterly alien. The thing that had been Elena turned to look at him, and Jake saw mercy in those glowing eyes. "Run," she said in a voice like singing crystals. "I'll try to hold them back, but I don't know how long I can resist becoming like them completely."
Jake ran.
Through corridors filled with shadows that reached for him with hungry tendrils, past rooms where reality itself seemed to be melting. Behind him, he could hear Elena's voice join with the voices of the shadow creatures, creating harmonies that made his soul ache with loss. He made it to an escape pod just as the Defiance's hull began to dissolve, consumed by the spreading darkness. As the pod launched, Jake looked back to see the mining station transformed into something that hurt to perceive directly. The asteroid itself was changing, becoming a massive organism covered in the same silvery veins as the chorus.
And, at its center, he could see Elena. Or what Elena had become.
A being of living light suspended in the heart of the alien structure, her arms outstretched as if embracing the entire cosmos. She was beautiful and terrible and lost to him forever. Jake's escape pod drifted through space for 6 days before a rescue ship found him. By then, the transformed asteroid had vanished, taking Elena and the shadow creatures with it.
The official report blamed equipment failures and structural collapse for the destruction of the mining station.
Jake was commended for his heroic evacuation efforts and offered a promotion.
He turned it down. How could he accept praise for heroism when he had been the one to bring the chorus aboard? When his weakness had allowed love to cloud his judgment? Elena was gone because of him.
Thousands of miners were dead because he hadn't been strong enough to make the hard choice when it mattered.
For 3 months, Jake drifted between space stations and colony worlds, drinking away his guilt and trying to forget Elena's final transformation.
He told himself she was dead, that the creature who had spoken to him at the end wasn't really her anymore. But, deep down, he knew the truth was more complicated than that.
Elena hadn't died. She had evolved. Become something beyond human understanding.
And, somewhere in the darkness between stars, she was still out there, bridging the gap between humanity and forces that could destroy entire civilizations. Jake was staying on a frontier trading post when the news reached him.
Reports of strange phenomena on the outer colonies.
Ships disappearing without trace.
Mining operations going silent.
And, at the center of it all, sightings of a massive organism moving through space like a living comet, beautiful and terrifying in equal measure.
The thing Elena had become was coming back.
Jake stared at the news reports, his hands shaking as he recognized the silvery patterns described by surviving witnesses.
The harmonics that made electronic equipment malfunction.
The way reality seemed to bend around the creature's presence. He had hoped never to see her again.
Had prayed that whatever Elena had become would stay in the deep dark between galaxies.
But something was drawing her back to human space. Something that filled Jake with dread.
Because if Elena was returning, it meant the shadow creatures weren't gone.
They were organizing.
Learning. Growing stronger.
And the fragile peace Elena had negotiated in those final moments aboard the Defiance was breaking down.
Jake bought passage on the next transport heading for the outer colonies.
He didn't know what he could do against forces that had transformed the woman he loved into something beyond human comprehension. But he knew he had to try. Elena had sacrificed everything to save humanity from the shadow creatures. The least he could do was face whatever was coming next. As his transport jumped into hyperspace, Jake closed his eyes and tried not to think about Elena's final words. About the mercy in her transformed gaze. About the possibility that somewhere inside that cosmic entity, the woman he loved was still fighting to protect the species that had already forgotten her sacrifice. The stars outside his viewport seemed dimmer now, as if something vast and hungry was moving between them, consuming light itself. Jake gripped his sidearm and wondered if bullets would have any effect on creatures that existed partially outside normal reality.
He was about to find out.
Because according to the latest reports, Elena's transformed state was heading directly for Earth itself. The homeworld of humanity stood in the path of something that could reshape matter with a thought and communicate through harmonics that drove lesser minds to madness. Jake Morrison, failed captain and reluctant hero, was humanity's best hope for understanding what Elena had become.
And what she wanted. The irony wasn't lost on him.
3 months ago, he had been ready to destroy the chorus to save Elena.
Now he might have to destroy Elena to save humanity. If he even could.
If the being she had become could be destroyed at all. The transport shuddered as it dropped out of hyperspace near the Titan station, and Jake looked out at stars that seemed somehow wrong. Too bright in some places, too dark in others, as if space itself was being rewritten by an intelligence beyond human comprehension.
Elena was close.
He could feel it in his bones, in the way his thoughts seemed to echo with harmonics that made his teeth ache. Somewhere in the darkness between worlds, the woman he had loved and lost was coming home. And Jake would be waiting for her. Jake Morrison stood on the observation deck of Titan Station, watching the emergency evacuation ships streak away from Earth like fleeing stars. In the 3 days since his arrival at the outer system, everything had gone to hell. The entity that had once been Elena Vasquez was closer now, close enough that her presence was causing reality distortions throughout the solar system. The brass had given Jake a field commission and a desperate mission: make contact with the cosmic entity and determine its intentions.
They chose him because he was the only person who had witnessed Elena's transformation and lived to tell about it. He was their expert on something that defied all human understanding.
Admiral Chen stood beside him, her weathered face grim as she studied the tactical displays.
Morrison, your transport leaves in 1 hour. Are you sure about this? Jake nodded, though his hands trembled as he gripped the railing.
Through the station's reinforced viewport, he could see the distortion field approaching Earth. Space itself rippled like water around the entity, and distant stars wavered as if seen through heat shimmer.
She responded to our broadcasts using the same harmonic frequencies as the chorus. That means some part of Elena is still in there. Still thinking like a human.
Or it could be using your memories against us, Chen replied.
The xenobiology teams think this creature might be a collective consciousness that absorbed Elena's personality. What if it's just wearing her face to get close to Earth? Jake had considered that possibility during the long journey from the frontier.
The thing approaching Earth was massive beyond comprehension, larger than most space stations, its surface flowing with the same silvery patterns he remembered from the chorus. But, when it broadcast responses to human communications, the voice was unmistakably Elena's. Not just the sound, but the way she chose words, the subtle inflections that spoke of a mind he had once known intimately.
Then, I'll find out, Jake said. And if Elena is gone, if this is just some cosmic predator wearing her voice, I'll do what I should have done 3 months ago. Admiral Chen nodded toward the modified courier ship waiting in the station's docking bay.
The vessel had been hastily retrofitted with experimental communication equipment and shielding designed to protect against psychic interference. Jake would pilot it alone into the entity's influence field, where no other human technology could function.
The moment you determine hostile intent, you activate the quantum mines, Chen said.
They're the only weapons we have that might actually damage something existing partially outside normal spacetime. Jake touched the detonator secured to his belt. 12 quantum mines attached to a ship's hull, each one capable of tearing holes in reality itself.
If Elena had become a threat to humanity, he would destroy her. Again. This time for real. But, as he walked toward the docking bay, Jake couldn't stop thinking about their last conversation.
The way Elena had looked at him with those transformed eyes, still full of love despite everything she had become.
She had saved humanity once by merging with the chorus. If she was returning now, there had to be a reason.
The courier ship Redemption was cramped and uncomfortable, designed for speed rather than living space. As Jake strapped himself into the pilot's seat, he tried not to think about the fact that this was probably a one-way trip. Even if the entity really was Elena, even if she didn't want to hurt him, the forces at play were beyond human comprehension. He might survive the encounter only to be transformed into something as alien as she had become.
The Redemption launched from Titan Station and began its journey toward Earth.
As Jake flew deeper into the solar system, he watched the space around him slowly change. First, the stars began to flicker and dance as gravitational fields fluctuated wildly. Then, colors started bleeding into the vacuum itself, impossible auroras of silver and gold that painted the darkness in hues that had no names. His instruments started malfunctioning as he approached the entity's position. Gravity sensors gave readings that defied physics, while the communication array picked up signals that seemed to be coming from everywhere at once. But, through the chaos, Jake heard something that made his heart race, Elena's voice, singing the same lullaby she had hummed while working in her lab aboard the Defiance.
Jake!
The voice came through his speakers with perfect clarity, cutting through all the interference.
I knew you would come.
Jake activated his recording equipment and opened a communication channel.
Elena! Are you still in there? Still yourself?
There was a pause that seemed to last forever.
Then, I'm more myself than I've ever been. And, less. I remember being human, Jake. I remember loving you.
But, I also remember being born in the dark between galaxies, dreaming in harmonics that reshape matter itself.
I am Elena Vasquez. I am also the voice of the chorus. I am the bridge between what you are and what we are becoming. Through his viewport, Jake could see the entity approaching Earth. It was beautiful in a way that hurt to perceive directly, a flowing mass of living light that pulsed with its own internal rhythms.
As it moved, space around it bent and twisted, creating patterns that reminded Jake of neural networks or the branching structure of coral reefs.
"Why did you come back?" Jake asked. "We thought you had left human space forever."
"I tried to," Elena replied, her voice tinged with something that might have been sadness. "For months I led the chorus away from your worlds, teaching them about humanity, helping them understand that you are not simply food to be consumed."
"But they are ancient beings, Jake. Patient. They observe and learn and plan across eons. And what they learned about humanity, it frightened them." Jake's blood ran cold. "What do you mean?"
"You spread so quickly," Elena said. "In the cosmic blink of an eye, you have gone from a single world to dozens of colonies scattered across hundreds of light years.
Your technology grows exponentially. Your population explodes.
The chorus have seen species like this before, Jake. Species that consume everything in their path until there is nothing left but empty worlds and silence."
"So they've come to stop us?"
Jake gripped the detonator, his finger hovering over the activation switch.
"Elena, if that's why you're here." "No."
Her voice carried harmonics that seemed to resonate in his bones.
"I convinced them that humanity could be different.
That you could evolve beyond mere consumption.
But they wanted proof. They wanted to see if humans could choose cooperation over conquest when faced with a superior force." Jake stared at the entity as it continued its approach toward Earth.
The home planet was visible now, a blue marble suspended in the void. Military ships surrounded it in defensive formations, their weapons trained on Elena's transformed state. One word from Admiral Chen, and they would open fire with everything they had.
"This is a test?" Jake asked. "Everything is a test," Elena replied. "How you respond to my presence.
How your leaders choose to react when faced with something they cannot understand or control. Whether you can overcome your instincts for violence and domination when confronted with beings more powerful than yourselves."
Jake watched Earth growing larger as they approached. He could see the evacuation ships streaming away from the planet, carrying millions of people to safety.
The remaining population was sheltering in underground bunkers and orbital stations, waiting to see if this was humanity's first contact with truly alien intelligence or the beginning of their extinction.
"And if we fail your test?" Jake asked. Elena's response was quiet, barely audible over the cosmic interference.
"Then, the chorus will do what they have always done when they encounter a species too dangerous to leave unchecked. They will prune you back. Reduce your numbers to levels that pose no threat to the galaxy's ecosystem. Most of your colonies will survive, but Earth is where your expansion began.
It would become a memorial to the choice you made." Jake felt sick.
The quantum mines on his ship suddenly seemed pathetically inadequate.
Elena wasn't just threatening Earth, she was representing a collective of beings that could reshape reality itself.
If humanity failed this test, there would be no military solution.
No heroic last stand. Just a gradual dimming of human civilization until only scattered survivors remained to remember what they had once been. "What do you want us to do?" Jake asked. "Stop running," Elena said. "Stop preparing for war. Show the chorus that humanity can choose understanding over fear. Let me land on Earth. Let me speak to your leaders directly.
Prove that you can trust something alien and strange and powerful without immediately trying to destroy it."
Jake looked at his instruments.
The redemption was now close enough to Earth that he could see the defensive fleets in detail. Thousands of ships bristling with weapons, their crews waiting for orders to attack the cosmic entity that had once been human. Admiral Chen would be watching his approach, ready to give the command that would turn the space around Earth into a battlefield.
"Elena," Jake said carefully, "how do I know this isn't exactly what the shadow creatures want? How do I know they haven't just used your memories to create the perfect weapon against us?"
There was another long pause.
When Elena spoke again, her voice carried pain that no alien intelligence could have faked. "Because I'm fighting them every moment, Jake. The chorus doesn't understand concepts like love or sacrifice or hope. But I do.
And I'm using those human emotions to teach them something they've never learned in millions of years of existence: mercy.
Show me, Jake said. Prove you're still Elena.
The space around his ship suddenly filled with images. Not on his screens, but projected directly into his mind. He saw Elena's memories of their time together aboard the Defiance. Her excitement at discovering the chorus. Her growing fear as she realized what it really was. And, finally, her decision to merge with the entity not out of curiosity or scientific ambition, but out of love for humanity. But, underneath those human memories, Jake sensed something vast and ancient and utterly alien. The chorus was there, watching through Elena's eyes, learning from her experiences. And what it learned was that humans were not just another species to be catalogued and possibly eliminated. They were something new in the galaxy, beings capable of love and sacrifice and growth. I can't hold them back much longer, Elena said, her voice strained with effort. The chorus is beginning to understand human emotions, but they're also becoming impatient.
They want a decision. Either humanity proves it can coexist with forces beyond its control, or they implement a final solution.
Jake looked at Earth, floating serene and beautiful against the starfield. Billions of people lived on that world, most of them completely unaware that their fate was being decided by a conversation between a disgraced starship captain and the woman he had loved and lost.
I need guarantees, Jake said. If I convince Earth to stand down, if I get them to let you land peacefully, how do I know the chorus won't just consume the planet anyway? You don't, Elena admitted. But, Jake, this is humanity's best chance. Maybe your only chance. The chorus has been watching your species for decades. They know about your wars, your environmental destruction, your expansion across the galaxy. They've seen civilizations like yours before, and they've never shown mercy. The only reason they're offering this test is because of what I've shown them about human potential. Jake closed his eyes and tried to think.
His military training told him to activate the quantum mines, to try destroying Elena's transformed state before it could reach Earth. But his heart told him that Elena was still fighting for humanity, still trying to save the species she had once belonged to. Through his earpiece, he heard Admiral Chen's voice crackling with interference.
Morrison, report your status. The entity is approaching Earth's orbital space. We need to know if it's hostile.
Jake opened his eyes and looked at the blue world ahead of him.
Whatever choice he made in the next few minutes would determine the fate of every human being in the galaxy.
Trust Elena and risk everything on the hope that her influence over the chorus was real. Or activate the mines and try to destroy the only bridge between humanity and forces that could erase them from existence.
Elena, he said quietly, if I do this, if I convince them to stand down, will you still be you when it's over?
Her response was barely a whisper, filled with love and loss and desperate hope.
I don't know, Jake. Every moment I spend merged with the chorus, I become more like them and less like what I was.
But maybe that's what humanity needs, someone who can understand both sides, who can speak for you in a language the chorus comprehends. Jake reached for his communication controls.
In a few seconds, he would either save humanity or doom it.
The weight of 8 billion lives pressed down on him like a physical force, making it hard to breathe. But, then, he thought about Elena's sacrifice 3 months ago. How she had given up everything human about herself to save a species that would never truly understand what she had done. How she was still fighting, still trying to protect people who might never know her name.
If Elena could make that sacrifice, Jake could make this choice.
He opened a channel to Admiral Chen and hoped he wasn't about to become responsible for the extinction of his own species.
All ships, stand down.
Jake's voice cut through the communication channels like a blade through silk. I repeat, all military vessels are to power down weapons and withdraw to minimum safe distance.
The entity is not hostile.
I'm bringing her in for peaceful contact. The response was immediate chaos.
Admiral Chen's voice exploded over the comm system. Morrison, are you insane?
That thing could destroy Earth with a thought. Admiral, with respect, that's exactly why we need to trust her, Jake replied, watching Elena's transformed state approach Earth's atmosphere. The cosmic entity was beautiful and terrible as it descended, its silvery patterns pulsing in rhythms that seemed to match the planet's heartbeat. If the chorus wanted to destroy us, they wouldn't need to get this close.
This is our chance to prove humanity can evolve beyond violence. Through his viewport, Jake could see the defensive fleets hesitating.
Some ships began powering down their weapons, while others maintained targeting locks on Elena's position.
The next few minutes would determine whether humanity passed the test Elena had described, or failed catastrophically.
Jake, Elena's voice carried new harmonics now, deeper and more complex as her entity form approached Earth's gravity well.
I can feel their fear.
The chorus is responding to the aggressive postures of your military ships.
If they perceive a threat, how long do we have?
Jake asked, his hands flying over his controls as he tried to coordinate the massive fleet withdrawal.
Minutes, Elena replied. Maybe less. The chorus doesn't understand concepts like bluffing or defensive positioning.
To them, a weapon pointed in their direction is a weapon about to be used.
Jake opened emergency channels to every ship in the fleet. This is Captain Morrison with direct orders from Admiral Chen. Any vessel that does not immediately power down weapons and withdrawal will be considered in violation of direct orders.
This is not a drill.
Stand down now.
It was a bluff that could get him court-martialed or executed for treason, but Jake didn't care. He watched as ship after ship began powering down their weapon systems and backing away from Earth.
But not all of them.
A squadron of heavy cruisers maintained their aggressive stance, their captains apparently deciding that orders from a disgraced officer weren't worth following.
Elena, we have a problem, Jake said. Some of the ships aren't standing down. The cosmic entity that had been Elena Vasquez paused in its descent toward Earth.
Jake could see it through his ship's sensors, a massive form of living light and flowing energy, beautiful and alien in ways that made his mind struggle to process what he was seeing. When Elena spoke, her voice carried undertones that sounded like the birth cries of stars. I can feel the chorus growing agitated, she said. They're interpreting the continued weapons lock as a sign that humanity cannot be trusted. Jake, if those ships don't stand down in the next 30 seconds, the chorus will act to protect themselves.
Jake didn't hesitate.
He turned his ship toward the squadron of heavy cruisers and activated every communication channel he could access.
Cruiser Squadron Gamma, this is Captain Morrison. You are endangering 8 billion lives by maintaining weapons lock. Stand down immediately or I will consider you hostile to human interests.
The response came from Captain Rodriguez of the UES Thunderbolt. Morrison, you're not in the chain of command anymore. We take our orders from Earth Defense Command, not from washed-up officers who consort with alien monsters. Jake felt a flash of anger so intense it made his vision blur. These officers were about to trigger a war that would end human civilization, and they were doing it out of pride and fear and stubborn adherence to protocol.
Elena, Jake said quietly, can you give me 30 more seconds?
I'm trying, she replied, her voice strained.
But the chorus is ancient and powerful and afraid.
They've survived for millions of years by destroying threats before those threats could grow too powerful. Every moment your ships maintain weapons lock, they become more convinced that humanity cannot coexist with superior beings.
Jake looked at the quantum mines attached to his ship's hull. Weapons designed to damage entities existing partially outside normal spacetime.
But maybe they could serve another purpose. Maybe instead of destroying Elena, they could send a message to the stubborn captains who were about to doom their own species. Rodriguez, Jake broadcast on an open channel that every ship in the fleet could hear.
You want to see what weapons look like when they're actually being used? Watch this.
Jake activated one of the quantum mines and ejected it into space between his ship and the heavy cruiser squadron. The mine detonated in a flash of impossible colors, tearing a hole in reality that revealed glimpses of dimensions where the laws of physics worked differently. For a moment, space itself screamed. When the distortion cleared, Jake continued his broadcast. That was one mine. I have 11 more, and they're all aimed at anyone stupid enough to start a war with beings that can reshape matter with their thoughts. Now stand down before I decide you're more of a threat to humanity than the aliens are. The effect was immediate. Cruiser Squadron Gamma powered down their weapons and began withdrawing to safe distance. Captain Rodriguez's voice was shaky when he responded, "Morrison, you're completely insane."
But, weapons are powered down. Don't blow any more holes in spacetime.
Jake felt relief wash over him like a physical sensation.
Around Earth, the last of the defensive fleets was backing away, their weapons darkened, their crews watching in awe and terror as Elena's transformed state resumed its approach to the planet. "Thank you," Elena's voice was soft, filled with gratitude that no alien intelligence could have faked. The chorus is pleased. They didn't expect humans to show such restraint when faced with a superior force. You've given them hope that coexistence might be possible. Jake watched as Elena's entity form settled into Earth's upper atmosphere, its massive bulk seeming to float effortlessly in the thin air. The sight was impossible by any known laws of physics, but Jake was getting used to impossible things. The woman he loved had become something that existed partially outside the normal universe. Normal rules no longer applied. "What happens now?"
Jake asked.
"Now I need to speak with your leaders," Elena replied. "The chorus wants to understand human governmental structures.
They need to know if your species can make binding agreements that will be honored across multiple generations."
Jake established a communication link with Earth's leadership.
Within minutes, he found himself coordinating the most important diplomatic meeting in human history. President Chen, Secretary General Martinez, and representatives from every major world government gathered in the United Nations building in New York, while Elena's cosmic form hovered in the sky above the city.
The conversation that followed changed everything humanity thought they knew about the universe. Elena explained that the chorus was just one of many ancient intelligences that existed in the space between galaxies.
Most were content to drift in the cosmic dark, dreaming in harmonics that spanned eons. But a few, like the chorus, actively monitored younger civilizations, watching for signs that a species might become a threat to the galaxy's delicate ecosystem. "You spread so fast," Elena told the assembled leaders, her voice broadcasting from speakers throughout the UN building. "In just a few thousand years, you went from stone tools to starships. Most species take millions of years to reach that level of development. The rapid growth pattern usually indicates a civilization that consumes resources faster than they can be replenished." President Chen leaned forward in her chair.
"Are you saying humanity is under some kind of cosmic probation?"
"In a sense, yes," Elena replied. "The chorus has identified 17 species like yours in this galaxy alone. Species that expanded too quickly and consumed too much.
None of them exist anymore." The silence in the UN building was deafening.
Jake, watching from his ship high above Earth, felt the weight of that revelation settle over humanity like a shroud. They were not alone in the universe, but their cosmic neighbors were ancient beings with the power to erase entire civilizations. "But you've also shown something the chorus has never seen before," Elena continued. "The capacity for individuals to sacrifice themselves for their entire species. The ability to choose trust over fear when faced with superior force. These are behaviors that suggest humanity might evolve beyond mere consumption."
Secretary General Martinez spoke carefully. "What would be required to pass this evaluation?"
Elena's response came after a long pause, during which Jake imagined her consulting with the vast intelligence of the chorus.
"Restraint.
Proof that humanity can limit its expansion when necessary.
Demonstration that you can coexist with other intelligences without attempting to dominate or destroy them.
And, most importantly, evidence that you can change your fundamental nature when the survival of other species depends on it."
Jake listened to the discussion that followed with growing amazement. Humanity's leaders were actually considering the demands of cosmic entities that could erase Earth with a thought.
There was fear, certainly, but also something Jake hadn't expected: genuine willingness to change.
President Chen proposed the establishment of expansion limits for human colonies.
Secretary General Martinez suggested the creation of interstellar nature preserves where alien life forms could develop without human interference. Other leaders offered to redirect military spending toward environmental restoration and sustainable technology development. "The chorus is intrigued by these proposals," Elena said. "But they will require proof, not just promises. They want to see actual changes in human behavior patterns across multiple decades."
"And if we agree to these terms?" President Chen asked. Then, humanity will be granted protected status.
The chorus will share certain technologies that will allow you to expand without depleting resources. You'll be introduced to a galactic community of species that have learned to coexist with forces greater than themselves. And, eventually, when you've proven your commitment to cosmic citizenship, you might even be invited to join the monitoring efforts for younger civilizations. Jake felt a strange mix of emotions as he listened to Elena negotiate humanity's future. Pride at his species' willingness to adapt and grow. Sadness that Elena could never return to the woman she had been. And hope that maybe her sacrifice had opened a door to a future none of them could have imagined. There's something else, Elena added, her voice taking on personal tones that cut through the cosmic harmonics. The changes I've described will take generations to implement fully. The chorus is willing to wait, but they need a permanent liaison. Someone who can bridge the gap between human and alien consciousness. Someone who can advocate for humanity while ensuring compliance with cosmic law. Jake realized what she was saying. Elena would never come home. She would spend the rest of her transformed existence serving as humanity's representative to intelligences that existed beyond normal space and time. She would watch over her species from the darkness between stars, protecting them from forces they couldn't even comprehend. Elena, Jake said quietly over a private channel, is this what you want? Her response was filled with complex emotions that seemed to include love and loss and acceptance. I want humanity to survive, Jake. I want our species to grow beyond its current limitations and become something worthy of the cosmic community. If that requires me to remain as I am, to serve as a bridge between worlds, then that's a price I'm willing to pay. Jake felt tears he hadn't known were forming track down his cheeks. Elena had saved humanity twice now, once by preventing the shadow creatures from consuming Earth's population, and again by convincing ancient cosmic entities to give his species a chance at redemption. The formal agreements took hours to negotiate, but eventually humanity's leaders signed documents that would reshape their civilization's future. Expansion limits. Environmental restoration requirements. Technologies that would allow sustainable growth across multiple star systems. And oversight by beings so advanced that their casual attention could reshape reality. As the negotiations concluded, Elena's cosmic form began to rise back toward space. Jake knew this was probably the last time he would ever speak to her, the final conversation between a man and the woman who had given up everything human about herself to save her species. Elena, Jake said, I want you to know that I understand now. What you did wasn't just about stopping the chorus. It was about showing them that humans could be better than their worst instincts. You didn't just save us, you elevated us. Her response was soft, barely audible over the cosmic interference. I love you, Jake Morrison. I loved you when I was human, and I love you still as whatever I become. Watch over our species while I'm gone. Help them become worthy of the gift they've been given. Jake watched Elena's transformed state rise toward the stars, her light growing dimmer as she traveled back to the darkness between galaxies. She would return periodically to monitor humanity's progress and report to the chorus. But she would never again be the woman who had shared his bed and dreamed of unlocking the secrets of alien life. In the months that followed, Jake found himself appointed as Earth's liaison to Elena and the cosmic entities she represented. It was a strange job, part diplomat, part scientist, part guardian of humanity's cosmic probation. He helped coordinate the massive social changes required by humanity's agreement with the chorus. Expansion limits. Resource conservation. The development of technologies that worked in harmony with natural systems rather than consuming them. But, perhaps most importantly, Jake helped humanity understand that they were no longer alone in a hostile universe. They were junior members of a cosmic community that had existed for millions of years, watched over by intelligences so vast and ancient that human minds could barely comprehend their nature. Sometimes, late at night in his office overlooking the lights of New York City, Jake would receive brief transmissions from Elena. Updates on humanity's progress. Reports from the deep dark where cosmic entities dreamed in harmonies that shaped matter itself. And, occasionally, messages that were personal rather than official, reminders that somewhere in the space between galaxies, the woman he had loved was still watching over the species she had died to protect. Jake had thought he killed Elena when he brought the chorus aboard the Defiance. Later, he thought she had died when she merged with alien intelligence to save humanity from the shadow creatures.
But now he understood the truth: Elena Vasquez hadn't died at all. She had evolved.
Transformed into something greater than human, but still fundamentally shaped by human values like love and sacrifice and hope. She had become humanity's guardian angel, watching over them from the cosmic dark. And Jake Morrison, failed starship captain and reluctant hero, had become her voice in a world that was learning to reach beyond its limitations towards something magnificent and strange and worthy of the stars. The future stretched ahead like an uncharted galaxy, full of possibilities that would have been impossible without Elena's sacrifice. Humanity would grow and change and eventually take its place among the cosmic entities that shaped the universe itself. And, when that day came, Elena would be there to welcome them home to a community of minds that spanned the breadth of space and time.
Jake looked up at the stars and whispered a promise to the darkness between them: "We won't waste the gift you gave us. We'll become worthy of it."
Somewhere in the cosmic dark, Jake imagined Elena smiling with whatever passed for a face in her transformed state. Humanity's greatest love story had become its salvation. And the woman who had sacrificed everything to bridge the gap between species would spend eternity ensuring that her people never forgot the price of their redemption. The stars seemed brighter that night, as if lit by the presence of something vast and loving and eternally watchful. Elena Vasquez was gone, but the guardian she had become would protect humanity until the last star burned out and the universe itself grew cold and dark. It was, Jake thought, exactly the kind of ending Elena would have chosen. Love transformed into something cosmic. Sacrifice rewarded with eternal purpose. And hope that stretched across the infinite distances between worlds, binding together species that had learned to dream in harmony with the music of the spheres.
Humanity was no longer alone.
And Jake Morrison, who had once thought himself responsible for destroying the woman he loved, had learned that some kinds of love transcend death, transcend species, transcend the very boundaries of what it means to be human. Elena lived on in the space between stars, and her love would guide humanity toward a future worthy of the cosmos itself.